people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Ellie Scotney, the road to undisputed, and more.
Catford.
Scotney has somewhat struggled for the limelight in her professional career. Probably the purest boxer on her side of the sport, Scotney needed and deserved a bigger push. But it didn't quite happen for her, not at Matchroom. Now that she is aligned with Jake Paul, you sense that her career will get everything it has been looking for. In simple terms, it has changed everything for her. Scotney added the WBC bauble to her collection of sanctioning body belts when she emphatically outpointed the Mexican Yemi Mercado on Friday at Madison Square Garden in New York. The unified WBC, IBF, and WBO Super Bantamweight champion now only has one belt left to collect. Another Mexican in Mayeli Flores, and a WBA title will be the obvious next target. One final piece of boxing jewelry for the right to be called undisputed. I'm one step away from undisputed, and that's what I want next, Scotney said after her impressive win over Mercado. The Shane McGuigan-trained fighter is seemingly now in the perfect place at the perfect time as her career moves to its next phase. With the right backing and promotion, Scotney could be about to make that breakthrough into mainstream acceptance and acknowledgement. The 27-year-old can already claim to be the best pound-for-pound fighter in her country. Within the next 12 months, Scotney might be in consideration to be the best female fighter on the planet.
Best in the country?
Well, there is also Lauren Price to consider. She, like Ellie Scotney, has 3 of the 4 major titles in her respective weight class. I feel that they are sort of neck to neck with each other. The manner in which Scotney dismantled Yemi Mercado in New York will have earned her many plaudits and an enhanced fan base, a new audience, both live and the millions who witnessed her impressive dismantling of an opponent on Netflix, an opponent that some thought would give her a hard night's work.
Catford.
Scotney made a potentially difficult fight look incredibly easy. The perfect introduction to her new audience, the hookup with Jake Paul and MVP, should guarantee Scotney activity and exposure. Both have been lacking in recent times. The Catford fighter will now look to make up for lost time. Scotney will look to take that one final step on the road to undisputed and will then move up to featherweight to chase the same at a second weight. But every great fighter needs a rival. Scotney might have that in Sky Nicolson. I've had the hard fights at Super Bantamweight, but you need the names. I want to get my name to stick in people's minds. I want to make a mark and be remembered, Scotney told me last year when I asked her about a possible fight with Nicolson, a high-profile fight that could elevate the winner in many ways. Scotney hit the nail on the head.
She would get more attention and thereby more credit for fighting someone that people know than fighting someone that people don't, even though she's already faced 3 reigning world champions in Shernika Johnson, Sigolene Lafarve, and more recently Yemi Mercado. It would stand out a lot more if she fought Sky, as strange as that might sound, even though Sky doesn't even have a belt.
The former WBC featherweight champion has recently moved down to Super Bantam, and an enticing clash with Scotney could tick many boxes for both fighters. Nicolson, who not so long ago was carrying the future undisputed label, is chasing a world title at a second weight. A fight with Scotney could give her that, and depending on the timing of any fight between the pair, could give her that undisputed status in one solitary fight. A lot of it will depend on Nicolson and her immediate intentions. Will she bide her time in her new weight division and wait for Scotney to make that inevitable move up to featherweight and then pick up one of the vacant titles? Winning a world title at super bantamweight will be a whole lot easier if Ellie Scotney weren't in the opposing corner. But equally, Nicolson, who spent a significant part of the last few years calling out Amanda Serrano, might fancy challenging herself against Scotney and picking up multiple world titles in one fight. For Scotney, Nicolson will give her an opponent and a fight that could take her career to a different level. For both, it could very much serve a purpose.
After Friday night's dominant win over Jamie Mercado, who was the longest reigning champion at super bantamweight, Ellie Scotney enters into the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list in the number 8 spot, ahead of undisputed champion Shernika Johnson and Gabby Fundora, but just behind Terry Harper.
The reasoning being, Ellie Scotney may have beaten 3 world champions and taken their belts, like Terry, but Terry's been a champion at more weights than Ellie. Ellie is a 3-weight world champion, whereas Ellie has only ever been a champion in 1. Though because she did beat Shernika Johnson already, Shernika comes in behind her
At number 9.
Gabby Fundora moves 2 spots down to number 10. The reason for it, Gabby Fundora may be an undisputed champion, like Shernika Johnson, but Shernika's been a champion at more weights than Gabby. Shernika was a champion at 122, and she's a champion now at 118.
They've both beaten the same number of world champions and taken titles from them, 2 apiece.
And they're both undisputed, but the tiebreaker is Shernika is a 2-weight world champion, where Gabby has only ever been a champion at 1 weight.
Scotney versus Nicolson.
It's not a necessary fight for Ellie Scotney. Sky Nicolson doesn't have any hardware that Ellie Scotney needs or wants, but what she does have is more of a profile than any of her previous opponents, more of a profile than the champion that she just fought. So you can consider that fight an investment of sorts.
Kind of.
It is a fight that would get people's attention, though the first order of business for Ellie, more than a Sky Nicolson fight, is grabbing that last brass ring.
Undisputed.
Men's lightweight news per Chava ESPN. Lamont Roach is already exploring other options after the second fight with Gervonta Davis fell through. There was talk of June 21st, then August 16th, and now, well, nothing.
Not surprising.
Their initial meeting was about 3 months ago. And you would have thought that for all this talk about Gervonta Davis being the face of boxing, they would have got the rematch done in a jiffy. It's not like Lamont Roach was giving him a problem. It's not like Lamont Roach wanted to hurry up and fight somebody else. He was more than willing to go back in there with Gervonta Davis. The rumor is Gervonta's the one sandbagging it, that Lamont already signed his end of the contract. It's Gervonta that hasn't signed his. So after this latest postponement...
But don't they say that Gervonta's got a rematch clause? And that Lamont is contractually bound to fight him again?
Yeah, that's what they were saying, but this is what they're saying now. So I don't know, just take it at face value and assume that because there is no official fight date for the rematch, Lamont is moving on. I already thought it was strange that Gervonta Davis is activating a rematch clause for a fight that ended in a draw. I would have thought the fight ending in a draw would have voided a rematch clause, because usually with a rematch clause, somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Nobody did either.
So don't that kill it?
Now, if Lamont Roach does end up moving on, you can expect Gervonta Davis's fans to accuse him of ducking, of avoiding the rematch, when by all accounts, it's Gervonta Davis that's holding things up. How many times do you hear his fans say that, well, he's the face of boxing, he's the A-side, he calls the shots, and if he's the one that calls the shots, and this fight isn't done yet, that's on him.
From me till I come, please, please, please.
How much time is Lamont supposed to spend waiting for Gervonta, who has his own problems, by the way? This rematch was delayed even before his latest arrest.
Said it a few days ago. The tentative date was August 16th, but with just a little over or a little under 5 weeks, that's not enough time to promote the fight between them.
Fight that wasn't announced anyway. As you can imagine, this also affects the undercard fighters. What undercard fights we could have expected? Supposed to be a fight between O'Shaquie Foster and Stephen Fulton. If this rematch is now not happening?
What happens to that fight?
These are just rumors, and they should be treated as such, but if it is true that Lamont Roach is moving on, he's not the one that needed the rematch anyway. He's not the one that needed redemption, and Gervonta Davis is not his only option for a big fight. Shakur Stevenson just fought this past weekend. Lamont's in waiting.
They made a verbal agreement that if things don't work out with Gervonta Davis for the rematch, they would then fight each other.
I'm sure that Turkey LL Sheik would pay Lamont Roach handsomely to box Shakur Stevenson on one of his Riyadh season or Ring Magazine shows. Hell, I'll go as far as saying that Lamont might make more money doing that than whatever he made fighting Gervonta.
Gervonta Davis don't guarantee his opponents life-altering money like Canelo does. You don't make but so much for boxing Gervonta Davis.
That pay-per-view didn't do astronomical numbers, even if the outcome was controversial, and as a result everybody was talking about it afterwards. How many of those people actually bought it?
Not a lot.
The Frank Martin pay-per-view, the Lamont Roach pay-per-view, Gervonta Davis has greatly struggled to duplicate the numbers he made with Ryan Garcia. He hasn't done that since, and that fight was a while ago. So trust me, Gervonta Davis's opponents don't make life-altering money. Lamont might actually make more boxing Shakur on one of Turkey's shows than whatever he made with Gervonta.
Now, as far as Gervonta, when it rains, it pours.
Oh yeah, there might still be a lot of people high on him now, willing to go up to bat for him and defend him, but as more time passes and less happens, people lose interest. Not dissimilar from what you've seen with Deontay Wilder. There was a time where you'd find an entire legion, an army, willing to die on a hill defending that fighter and his poor resume, whereas these days,
It was the same with Errol Spence.
he fought a nobody in Wichita, Kansas, and the world didn't notice. The boxing world didn't care. Now you're gonna tell yourself, well, the difference between Wilder and Errol is those guys lost.
And Gervonta Davis didn't?
To a lot of people, Lamont Roach already beat him, and if nothing else, he made him look human, which is almost as bad.
That air of invincibility.
It's gone. And if what remains of this year comes and goes, without Gervonta Davis righting that wrong, his stock is going to continue to plummet. It's all downhill. What often gets lost in conversation in the midst of these heated debates that boxing fans have is that this is all supposed to be entertainment. You and I are supposed to be entertained, but it's not entertaining talking about the same thing over and over when nothing is happening in place of actual fights. You have to fight.
If you've been paying attention, Gervonta Davis's rate of activity has been winding down ever since the Ryan Garcia fight. He only fought once last year. He may only fight once this one.
Lamont moving on is more of a critical hit for Gervonta Davis than it is for Lamont. And God forbid that he goes in there with Shakur and Shakur beats him easy, takes him to school. That's another hit. People are going to run out of reasons to defend this guy. They're going to run out of reasons to even talk about him.
Run out. They're already running out.
Men's junior middleweight news ahead of this weekend's mega rematch between Sebastian Fundora and Tszyu. The WBC junior middleweight champion Sebastian Fundora will fight Tszyu again this weekend. As we preview the upcoming bout, Fundora defeated Tszyu via a split decision in their initial encounter. Tszyu suffered an accidental cut over his hairline in the second round, leading to constant bleeding that impaired his vision throughout much of the fight. Despite the cut, Tszyu continued to fight, but Fundora capitalized on the situation, out-jabbing Tszyu, and ultimately secured the win and the belts, though he only has one now. Initially, he had won the WBO title off of Tszyu and what was the vacant WBC title. He has since forfeited the WBO title to Xander Zayas, and he will be defending the WBC this weekend. Since their initial clash, both fighters have had varying results. Fundora successfully defended his WBC title against Cordell Booker earlier this year, winning by TKO in the fourth round, while Tszyu suffered a TKO loss to Bakram Murtazaliev for the IBF junior middleweight title, but bounced back more recently with a TKO win against Joey Spencer in his last fight earlier this year. I'm happy to fight Tszyu a second time. He's a great fighter. I'm happy to share another 12 rounds with him. I think I beat him clearly the first time, and we have to do it again. It's just the business of boxing. It didn't bother me. I'll fight Zayas. We're gonna have to fight eventually. I don't get to pick my fights. That's my promoter's job.
So why did his promoter pick Tszyu instead of Zayas?
Because you get to fight Tszyu on a PBC show, essentially your own home turf, whereas if they would have fought Xander Zayas, that would have been on a top-ranked show. Sebastian, in some ways, would have been the away fighter. That, and you actually fought Tszyu before. You actually beat Tszyu before. The devil that you know factor. Why roll the dice with Xander on a top-ranked show when you can go in there and beat a guy that you already beat in Tim Tszyu?
That's the why.
Motivation is a pretty big factor in this fight, I'd say. The motivation behind Sebastian fighting Tim again, and Tim fighting Sebastian. Obviously, Tim is out for redemption. He wants to become a world champion again, whereas Sebastian,
What's his motivation?
I'd say it's playing it safe. You don't have to fight Tszyu again. You're choosing to do that, and it's because you look at that as being an easier fight than what else is out there. So motivation is pretty important.
I think Tim wants it more, and that matters.
I think their initial meeting was a setup. The whole thing. You will remember that initially, Sebastian was supposed to be fighting Sergey Boachuk. At the time, I found it hard to believe that Sebastian, who's managed by Samson Lukowicz, would fight a dangerous guy like Sergey on a whim.
I found it even harder to believe that Keith Thurman, who had already been out a long while, was going to be debuting at a new weight against the big, young, strong guy who's all in his prime.
I mean, remember that Tim Tszyu was unbeaten at the time and was riding high. And I found it very hard to believe that Keith Thurman was going to go through with this. So that when it all fell apart and it happened the way it happened, it became obvious to me this was a setup.
They were setting Timmy up.
Keith was never going to fight him, but Timmy was none the wiser, and behind the scenes, Sebastian wasn't getting ready for a Sergey Boachuk fight. He was getting ready for a Tim Tszyu fight. They knew what they were doing. They knew that at the last minute, they were going to swap out Keith Thurman with Sebastian Fundora, who would have been the exact opposite of what Timmy was training for. He's training for a guy 5'7", 5'8", orthodox fighter in his mid-30s. He ends up with a 6'3" southpaw.
In his 20s. You think that's an accident?
So the way that breaks down, Sebastian Fundora may have had a full camp for Tim Tszyu, since that's who he was training for, where Timmy was caught with his pants down. And even in getting caught with his pants down, before the cut opened up over his head, he was well on his way to knocking out Sebastian. That's without a full camp. That's with a short notice opponent.
When Sebastian was on short notice, whereas this time, it's not short notice. Now Timmy has had a full camp for this guy. He's got all the experiences to draw from the first fight, and a full camp going into the second, with sparring, with proper preparation. And we know what his motivation is. Redemption. Revenge. Whereas Sebastian is doing little more than playing it safe.
The only caveat I see for Timmy is any residual damage and trauma from last year. Whatever he suffered at the hands of Sebastian, but not just him, Bakram Murtazaliev. Would any of that have hampered his confidence? And is he going to let that get in the way on Saturday night? That's a question that needs an answer. I don't have it for you, but I'm gonna go with Tim.
I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
But I'm gonna go with Timmy to get it right the second time out, because this time he's ready. This time, he knows who he's up against. I'm gonna go with Timmy by way of knockout on the undercard of Pacquiao versus Barrios.